Story 1. The sentence that cut the deepest was when my partner of 3 years looked me in the eyes and said, "I never loved you like I loved my ex." It shattered my perception of our relationship and left me questioning everything I thought I knew about love and trust. Story 2. The sentence that hurt me the most was said to me by my best friend at the time. "I was only friends with you because your parents have a huge house and drive a cool car." Story 3. I was diagnosed with a disease at 15, and my grandma said I must have done something wrong in the eyes of the Lord. It broke my brain. Story 4. You're just going to have to accept that you're not going to do as well as everyone else in life. A teacher said this in front of the whole class when I failed a test at the age of 12 because I misinterpreted a poorly worded question. It took me a long time to realize that I'm not a waste of time and space after that, but it knocked me back right when I was at my most significant point when it came to educational development. I wish to express my displeasure in a strong manner toward Miss Daniels, if you are still alive. Story 5. A few years after my dad passed, we found he still had around $300,000 in a foreign investment account. My mom decided to transfer it back to the States. For reasons I will never understand, she didn't want to transfer it to her own account. When I offered to look after it for her, she told me she would rather transfer it to her new boyfriend's account, a guy she's known for less than 2 years, adding that kids can't be trusted. Really, as an only child, she meant that I couldn't be trusted. I, who was already a full-grown adult in my 30s at the time, making nearly mid-six figures, had no intention of ever touching that money. Well, guess where the money is now? Still in said boyfriend's account, and she has no access to it at all. Oh, the irony. Story 6. My mom tearing up the beautiful Mother's Day card I bought and wrote for her, right in front of my face, and telling me she doesn't believe in pagan celebrations. She's a Jehovah's Witness. Really hurt. More than I realized it would. Still remember it to this day. I'd never do that to someone. I love her. It just upset me. Story 7. My mom said, "Out of all the things in this world, I can't believe a disappointment like you was birthed by me." This was said to me at the age of 15 when I was going through a lot as a teenager. Story 8. Maybe you shouldn't smile, you know? It really hurts because I know my smile is horrible due to my teeth, but it gets me depressed thinking about it every single time. It's one of the things that turned me into this antisocial, sad-looking, awfully quiet person. Story 9. I don't want him. I never wanted him. My dad said this when my parents were getting a divorce, and I was in the hallway with my grandma. Things didn't go his way in court. I was 9 years old. I also had to sit in a room with a judge to talk about whom I wanted to live with. I hate that they put me through that. Parents, some of you are really bad at it. Story 10. I remember when my uncle said to me in front of the whole family, "You are not as intelligent as your other siblings." I was 14 at that time, and those words cut me deep. Story 11. After my sister died, I was very upset. Someone told me she wasn't even my sister. She was adopted. Story 12. You're just like your father. The person met my father when he presented himself as a kind, bubbly, thoughtful person. Just a good man. That really hurt because I can assure you that he definitely did not fit that description. I don't want to be like my father. Story 13. Learn to be happy, said my best friend after I lost someone I love and I told her that I was sad. Story 14. You don't love me. You never have, said by my older sister suffering from first episode psychosis last month. I've put my job on hold, my life on hold to look after her, and that's what she said, which broke my heart. I've given everything up for her, and I have nothing more to give, and that's what she came at me with. Psychosis is so hard. It's even harder when they refuse to accept that something is wrong and refuse all help, but accept the basics to stay out of the hospital. She thinks she's fine, but is only doing as the doctors ask to stay out of the hospital. Story 15. I forgot you were even part of this team, a comment from my project manager that made me feel invisible. Story 16. I'm embarrassed to be seen with you, from a partner during a public event, making it one of the lowest points in our relationship. Story 17. Stop making a fuss, said my grandmother after she forced me to spend the $86 that I had spent over 2 months saving up on stuff she wanted. I was 8 years old. Story 18. You're just too much sometimes, said by a friend when I was just being myself, making me question my personality. Story 19. Not as awful as a lot of these, but a girl on a dating app told me to go grow some hair. I went bald early due to mental health and work-related stress and had been struggling with my body image for years, so that was a punch to the gut. I quit dating apps completely after that. Story 20. My mom said to a guest at our table, I wish I'd never had kids after my older sister. Then, looking at me and following with, I shouldn't say that though, because then I wouldn't have had my younger brother. I was 14. I understood you were telling everyone you didn't want me, Mom, but that's okay because now you don't have me. Story 21. I was 14. Our home was temporarily unusable because of a small fire. And of course, we didn't have insurance. Long story short, my mom and stepdad had dumped me at a stranger's house in the middle of nowhere. A divorced mom with 2 kids. It was pretty bleak. I had a bare mattress and a blanket in the 4-year-old's room. They left me there for months. I did childcare and housework in exchange for food. So after about 2 months, my mom invites me to spend the night at the motel room they had been staying in. There were 2 queen beds. So I asked if I could come back and stay there. The woman wasn't very nice to me, and I was lonely. And Mom said no, I would take up too much space. And what really stings was that they were paying all their expenses with my child support checks. Meanwhile, the few clothes I had were wearing out. I never had quite enough to eat, and I was deeply unhappy. When spring came, I couldn't take it anymore, and I called my father and asked him to come get me. He did. He and my stepmother took me out for a real meal, brought me home, and let me stay in my bedroom and cry for 3 days. They bought me clothes that fit properly and decent shoes and even makeup. After several months of living a normal life with a family that liked me, my mom guilted me into coming back to the repaired house. I stipulated that I'd only return if my child support checks went to me, and I paid rent. Going back was a serious mistake, but at least I had some money of my own, which gave me a lot more freedom. I don't see my mother much these days. She still doesn't think she did anything wrong that winter. Story 22. Your voice is really annoying. A comment from a colleague that made me self-conscious every time I spoke afterward. Story 23. You're too old to make a difference, was said during a discussion about changing careers, which made me doubt my decisions. Story 24. You don't belong in this industry. A gatekeeping comment from a senior professional that questioned my career path. Story 25. During a family argument, my uncle blurted out, "You are the reason your parents split up," which was devastating to hear. Story 26. You'll regret this lifestyle, implying that my choices are wrong and that I am living my life poorly. Story 27. During a heated debate, a friend said, "Your life is just a series of poor decisions," which was harsh and dismissive. Story 28. I never wanted you. My father confessed during a particularly brutal argument, which left a permanent scar. Story 29. You've wasted your potential. My mentor expressed disappointment, which was disheartening from someone I admired. Story 30. While I was having a miscarriage, the doctor in the emergency room asked why I was crying. He said it's not like I can't have another baby. He told me to wait a couple of months and try again. Insensitive person. Story 31. You're not the bright one, are you? Was offhandedly remarked by an acquaintance, simplifying my worth to intellectual capability. Story 32. At a family reunion, a cousin joked, "Were you adopted? You don't seem to belong," which hurt because I've always felt out of place in my family. Story 33. I have needs too. When I found out that my ex had started dating their friend 6 days into our separation, we were in couples therapy for almost 1.5 to 2 years. Story 34. We've got a lot on at the moment, was the response from my mom when I told her I was pregnant. I was married and had my own home, didn't rely on her for anything, and she was too busy for me to have a baby. Story 35. At a low point, my partner told me, "You're not worth the effort," undermining all the work I had put into our relationship. Story 36. I don't know if it's the most hurtful one, but definitely the one that haunts me at work. You don't have what it takes, you'll never make it in marketing, said by my tutor during my first year as a working student. I've always had imposter syndrome, and I can't get it out of my head nearly 12 years later. Sure, I was awkward at the beginning because I had never worked in an office before. Then she was fired after 6 months, and I replaced her for 5 years doing a great job by all accounts. I've been in the industry for a decade and have actually seen plenty of people working at renowned agencies less competent than me. But still, I'm constantly doubting myself and my career. Incidentally, her name was Karen. Karen, if you read this, forget you. Story 37. An ex, who I had known for a long time, said, I didn't want to be your friend because I was worried what everyone would think. He said this to me when I was walking him home safely while he was drunk. It broke my heart because he had no idea where he was, couldn't walk, and I was there helping him get home. I felt like leaving him there, but I couldn't do that to him. Also, I recently went out for dinner with a man who used to be my stepdad. I hadn't seen him for 18 years, but we talk at least monthly. He raised me from 6 to 15 years old, so most of my childhood. He said to me, I can't be your dad, but I can be your best friend. Then, the next day, he sent me a link to a portable vibrator app, and I haven't spoken to him since. There's no trust or love left at all there. Then, last but not least, my dad sexually abused me when I was a child, and he said, would you trust me with your child? The fact that he had the nerve to ask that broke my heart. Story 38. I don't think you will ever be able to help me in any way. You are useless to me. My dad told me this and threw me out of the house. It has been 7 years, and we have never ever spoken. I am 26 years old, male. Story 39. One that stands out from my childhood that devastated me was when I was in 3rd grade. School counselor said, what do you want me to do? Tell him he can't touch his daughter anymore? Well, I'm not going to do that. I am not telling a father he can't love on his own daughter. Get out of my office, stop crying, and go back to class. Story 40. What comes to my mind right now? I don't know whether I really love you or I just like all the things you do for me, said by a 1-year girlfriend I had before leaving me. Story 41. You are not my daughter. You are not my family. Do you know that? Said my father while being on drugs because I did nothing which angered him. Also, he is not my biological father. Story 42. I don't love you, my sister had said when we had a stupid argument. Even though I take care of her every day, be with her in tough times and didn't do anything annoying, she said she doesn't love me. After that sentence, I cried a lot in my room like a baby. Story 43. So, how did you manage to fake mental illness for so long to get on disability? Asked one of my oldest friends, who should know better. I'm diagnosed with persistent depressive disorder. Try faking that. Story 44. I can see myself getting married and having kids with her. I could never see any of that with you, said by my ex about the woman he dated after me. We had decided to be friends, but it didn't work. He had been with her roughly a month at the time, and we dated for over a year. Story 45. It was the year my brother died. I was 20 at the time and was looking at old pictures on the family desktop, just crying out the feelings. My sister, who is 4 years younger, walked through the dining room, where the computer desk is, and scoffed. When I turned to look at her, she said, he didn't even like you, so I don't know why you're crying, and stomped off. I'm all about forgiveness being for yourself and not the person you're forgiving. But I don't think I'll ever let that one go. Story 46. I didn't mean to hurt you, but I deserve to have intimacy with a hot guy. Not only did she cheat, but that didn't do much for the old self-image. Story 47. I've posted before about it, but in 2009, my fiancée of 36 hours passed away from a pulmonary embolism. As she was in between seizing, she said, "Oh God, don't let me die." I told her to knock it off, I wouldn't let her die, and kept going on CPR, trying to talk to paramedics. She didn't mean for it to be hurtful, but almost 15 years later, it still hurts. I love you, Lindsay. I'll see you again, but I have more life to live first. Story 48. You might not be pretty, but at least you're nice. My crush at the time. If you keep eating like that, you'll get as fat as a cow. The first time meeting my dad's new girlfriend back when I was 9. I was eating an appetizer. Story 49. If I had a son like you, I would be an alcoholic too. This was spoken to me as a teenager by a formerly trusted mentor. My dad would go on to drink himself to death. Story 50. Sentence said to me by my sperm donor, I can't believe you're making me do this. By this, he meant self-harm in front of me. I was 6. I still have vivid memories of him cutting his wrists. My mom came in, pulled me away from him and said, listen to me, you didn't make him do anything. Don't listen to him. After 14 years of therapy, I finally don't blame myself for the way he turned out. Story 51. Your comment about my breast size being too large is by far the least horrible thing that I have read from people here. Having said that, as someone who was not conventionally attractive and received quite a lot of negative attention for it from society at large, the fact that even what was considered my best attribute was not good enough really affected me deeply for a long time.